Good evening. Hope you guys are doing all right. So today is the last day of the team trials. I think the ladies are probably finishing up. I think the men finished up earlier today. I looked at some of the results. Kind of interesting. Hi, Tim. Anyway, um, hello, Stephen. So I finally tested negative for COVID. Yay! So I tested positive like a week and a half ago. I was probably had it a few days before that because I wasn't feeling so well 2 weeks ago on Sunday. I actually don't feel that bad, but had a nagging cough. I still have a cough and a little bit of nasal stuff going on, but fortunately I never did feel horrible. I would go out and practice horseshoes. I didn't go bowling in the last 2 weeks because I didn't want to infect other people. So unfortunately, my wife also had COVID, and um, she also tested positive for what's the other one? The other thing that's going around, and I probably got that too. I never tested it for it, so they don't have home tests for that. Uh, anyway, um, fortunately, like I said, I never felt horrible. I had a couple days where I didn't feel great. I did go to the doctor, gave me some stuff, but I still feel it a little bit in my lungs. But I just tested myself a couple hours ago, and it came up negative. So test myself in a couple of days, and then maybe I'll go ahead and bowl league on Wednesday. Came out to Flamingo Bowl in Liverpool. Yes, I did. Oh, thanks, Tim. Cookie lady. All right. Any questions? Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I will on occasion call bowling centers and try to set up clinics. I get two responses. One, they think I'm kidding them because they can't believe it's me, and the other half don't know who I am. It's actually more than half probably, and I have to kind of explain who I am, which is kind of sad. Syracuse, a little chilly up there. It's chilly down here. They only got in the low. It was up. It's probably in the low 60s today, but fortunately, it's not too bad. I'm not sure what it is up in New York. I'm sure it's a lot cooler than that. I think they're having like snowstorms, so they were a couple days ago. Thanks, Curtis. Yes, I haven't done any bowling. Haven't done any bowling in the last 2 weeks. '61 in Texas. Where's Kylene? Mainly I bowl one-handed, Tim. I bowl two-handed in league just to kind of get a little practice at it. And at times at the tournament I will bowl two-handed, but usually it's like a last-ditch effort. If I'm bowling two-handed, it's usually not a good sign, but I've done okay at it. Pulled out some decent blocks doing it the last couple of games, but mainly one-handed. Well, Adam, it's amazing how many people work in the bowling industry who are not bowling fanatics or whatever you want to call it. It kind of surprises me. It's a little disappointing. 40 years ago, most people worked at a bowling center were bowlers. Nowadays, they might bowl a little bit. An hour north of Austin. Okay. Have I ever been invited to the CP3 charity event? Nope. I guess I haven't done anything good enough to get invited. How often you use new bowling balls? Well, being part of being on the Brunswick staff, I have the honor of getting most every new ball that comes out by all 7 companies. I don't get them all, but I get a good majority of them. And I actually have a bunch of bowling balls in my garage right now that don't have any holes in them. I don't really like to drill up that many bowling balls. I don't have a huge difference. I guess because of my low rev rate, um, I don't get a huge difference between bowling balls. So, but every once in a while I get one that I really like that. Say the last one that I drilled, I'm trying to remember the name of it, but it's the one I used the last few tournaments. In fact, I used it down at the doubles tournament in Houston with Dio Bernard. Um, the Collision, was it the, God, I'm trying to think of the name of it, the Violent Collision. I really like that ball. So I don't really play cornhole. Just doesn't really interest me. I'm sure I could be decent at it, but like anything, you put a lot of practice into it. Like everything, it just takes a lot of practice. It doesn't just happen. I know a couple of guys that are, because I play horseshoes with them, and they went to playing cornhole. One guy is very, very good at it, Matt Guy. He was about a top 15 or top 20 horseshoe player about 20 years ago, and then I don't know, somewhere about 15, 18 years ago, he started playing cornhole, and he got very good at it, and he's been world champion several times, um, and he's done very well at it. And I know a few other top horseshoe players have also played in the professional leagues. Do I ever do any bowling events on cruise ship like Monticelli and no? I've been on cruises before. I even went on a cruise ship that had a bowling lane on it. Um, I actually bowled a couple games. I didn't have my bowling balls with me, which really wouldn't have mattered because they really didn't have any oil in the lane. The ball basically rolled out about 30 feet using their house balls, which was a conventional grip, and I couldn't slide with their bowling shoes, so I bowled in my socks. So it was not a great bowling experience. Am I coming back up to Kingsport? I'm planning on it. They've had the I think the last few years they've had the over 60 under 60 doubles tournament there, and I would imagine they might do that again this next year. And if they do, my plan is to go back up there. Very good hosts up there and treat me nice, and you know they even set up a clinic for me a time or two. I do not bowl on the regular PBA tour. I'm 64. Those young guys are pretty good. I'm not nearly that good anymore. Troops stated they hand oiled the lanes. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. Let's see. Where is it? Oh. Good evening, Mr. Zawaki. Tested negative for COVID. Yay! Finally. Hi, buddy. Well, buddy, it basically comes down to making good shots. I mean, you're a good bowler. Unfortunately, I think when I bowled with you last time, you were having some health issues, and that's probably going to be your biggest thing is dealing with that. So, good luck on that, and hopefully it is manageable. Recollection of the Empire State Open Arena Finals at Siena College. The flash bulb. Well, it wasn't a flash bulb. It was a flash camera, is what it was. It was like in the middle of the game. I don't remember exactly when, but unfortunately, well, it was a stadium setting, so they had portable lanes. So the lanes are probably 2.5 feet high above the ground, maybe 3 feet, and so they have probably had 4 lanes. That's usually what they would do. Have 2 lanes that you're bowling on and 2 lanes that you practice on. And then so on the right lane, they had people sitting down the lane. And they had like 3 or 4 people in wheelchairs and then some other people sitting in chairs. And it was actually somebody who was with one of the people in a wheelchair. And I don't think the person was actually a huge bowling fan, but they came there anyway. And I guess they got excited and took a picture of me while I was throwing a shot. And it was very distracting. I said some bad words, got a big split, and the sad part is the commentators didn't even realize what happened because they're off to the side over there. They're not watching us, and they said, "Oh, something happened," but they didn't know what it was. But yeah, it was a little frustrating. Things happen, unfortunately. Let's see. I'm trying to get some comments here. Let's see. Have you ever bowled left-handed or off the wrong foot? I can throw the ball left-handed. I've never really bowled for score. I think maybe one game in my life. I would guess I'd probably average about 150 or 160 right now. I think within a short amount of time I could probably average 200 on a house shot. I'm pretty decent playing horseshoes left-handed. Bowling on the wrong foot. I I've never really, I've kind of tried it, but maybe once or twice. It would be very challenging for me to do something like that because one, I wouldn't slide. Probably have to throw the ball really slow to do that. Any tips on improving one mental game? That's probably the toughest thing. The physical game's challenging. The mental game is another completely thing. But that, I think, unfortunately, people make too much out of it. If that makes any sense. Obviously, you got to have a good mental game, but you just got to pay attention to what you're doing, and keep telling yourself to do the right things, and it's just the mental game definitely a tough one though. As good as I have done, people think, oh, I must have a great mental game. I think for me, bowling, it was more of doing the it was more plugging along and just keep telling myself, keep throwing good shots, and it's going to happen, kind of thing. And it was kind of the long-term goal, and try not to worry about the one specific shot. Have you ever thought about retiring? Well, I don't bowl on the regular tour, so I'm kind of retired. I do bowl on the senior tour. I do bowl regionals, so in that aspect, I haven't completely retired. Unfortunately, I don't make very much money bowling anymore. Are you gonna rejoin the tour as a two-hander? Like I said, those guys are very, very good. And two-handed, I'm not that good. I'm decent, but I'm not that good. Favorite stops on the PBA tour? Where'd it go? Oh boy. Okay. City fan-wise. Well, probably my favorite was Erie, Pennsylvania. They didn't have any major sports teams there, and bowling was huge there. And I bowled very well there. So it was very fun bowling there. Any tournaments you're bowling in North Carolina soon? They've got a couple regionals. Well, they got one in South Carolina. They're going to have one in North Carolina and Fayetteville. And then in May, I think it's the beginning of May, or the end of, I think the beginning of May is going to be the National Senior Tour in Aberdeen, which is outside of Pinehurst. What do you think about USB certifying string pin bowling? I think it's okay. I think the string pin, I think it's come a long way. I think there probably can be a few more improvements on it, but it's. I think in 20 or 30 years, you're going to see lots and lots of string pin. You're not going to see, because I don't think they're going to be selling too many more free fall machinery. It's just a lot more expensive. People complain about the cost of bowling already. So, how would I increase my ball speed? Get the ball started earlier in the swing. Get a higher backswing. Those two things will do a lot. What are thoughts on Tom Adcock? Tom's a great bowler. Oh. And speaking of Tom, there he is. Tom's a great bowler. He was a very good bowler when he tried bowling on tour back in the 80s, and then life got in the way. And I think he, was, there was a bunch of guys like that, that didn't have maybe as much success as they thought they might have, and there's a few guys that it takes time. It does. There's very few guys that come right out on tour and just immediately crush them completely all the time. You can take any player you can think of, and pretty much they all had to quote learn out there. How's the new company coming? Well, it's doing all right. So this is my jersey company, Compass Sportswear. Let's see. So it's you know, we need we need more customers though. So so if you're interested in a jersey for you or your team or your league, contact us at compasssportswear.com. Curiosity. Do you remember my father, Bill McIntyre? You pitched with? Yes. Um, it was kind of funny. Bill was a pretty good player in New Jersey. He was, I think, I don't know how many times he was state champion, but he was very good. Um, and then I think the last few times I played him at the World Tournament, he beat me. And I'm like, and one year I pitched really good. I mean, he kind of unfortunately, nixed me from being a world champion that year. I think I only lost 2 games, and one of them was to him. He pitched a great game against me, and I didn't pitch a great game against him. Um, but I'm like, so what is it about you and me? He says, well, and he told me that when I played him in the early '80s up in Massachusetts at an indoor place, that I skunked him. And I didn't remember that because back then I was really really good, and that happened. Unfortunately, when you're playing cancellation games, that happens. But for some reason, it stuck in him, and he remembered when he played me, he was going to give me his best, and he did. He managed to beat me, I think, 3 years in a row at the World Tournament. Thanks, Lee. Yeah, I was disappointed I wasn't able to go to Las Vegas. I was looking forward to it. I don't know if I struck enough, but because it looked like they did a lot of striking. If someone had to throw 3 in the 10th to beat you by 1, who would you not want it to be? Well, let's see. There's only about, well, it depends. When you take those guys at their top of their game, you got somebody like Pete Weber, Norm Duke, Emleto Mocelli, Mike Colby, Park Cabone, Brian Voss, Emleto. Did I say Emleto already? And now you got E.J. Tackett and Simonson and Belmonte. I mean, there's so many good players. And so, what's my next big tournament? I guess my next big tournament would probably be the senior tour tournament, which is going to be in Michigan in late April. I think the first tournament of the season. That would be my next big tournament. I'll have a couple of regionals probably before then, but that would be my next big tournament. I loved when you moved that guy's shoe retrieval stake from being. Yeah, it was a little irritating. This guy had a big he had a big long pickup stick. It's about 2.5, 3 feet long, which I get. Some guys need it to help bend over or whatever. So he would stick it in the ground, and unfortunately, where we were playing, the surface next to where he was pitching wouldn't allow him to do that. So he would stick it. And the very first shots we're practicing, he sticks it, but he sticks it over on my side, which didn't make any sense. But I also play left. I'm playing left-handed, so I stand on the other side, where most of the guys are standing on the other walkway on the other side of the court. So he probably assumed that that's where I was going to be, and that would be out of my way. And so I put it over the other side. And then after that, he kept putting it up. And then it was like, then he'd walk back. And I'm like, well, that's kind of silly. So I actually, most of the time when I remembered, I'd pick it up and hand it to him as we're walking down the other side. So, yeah, sometimes these guys do things that irritate me a little bit. But I was also pitching bad at the time. So anytime I'm pitching bad, it takes just little tiny things to make me go off. When bowling on the PBA, who would you pick as your favorite bowling against? Well, I love bowling against all the guys, but I love beating them. So as long as they don't score too well against me, I kind of like that. Watching me bowl at Bradley Bowl. Yeah, that was a fun tournament. I had a couple of good years there. Unfortunately, I don't know if I ever won there, but I know I finished second at least once. Thanks for streaming the games. You're welcome. Do I use power grips or oval grips? Do you think power grips help with revs at all? I use the oval grips. I don't think they're called power grips, so I guess they're probably oval grips. I'm really not even 100% sure. They're vice grips. I know that. When they come with grippy things on one side, and I flipped around. I don't like the. I like the round or the oval side or whatever you want to call it. So, and then I also like to tweak them so that they're kind of in like this a little bit, so they last a little longer. So Justin, do you pitch horseshoes at all? Unfortunately, horseshoes isn't as popular as it used to be. So, and every once in a while I get up to New Jersey, and I was up there last year, and was able to practice at the horseshoe courts in Middlesex, New Jersey, which happened to be where I won my first junior world title back in 1971 when I was 11. Thanks, Stephen. I'm glad you like the horseshoe and bowling videos. I know a lot of my bowling fans aren't real crazy about the horseshoe stuff. They watch it for a few minutes and they're like, well, this is kind of boring, but um, horseshoes is definitely something I have a passion about. What do I think about Anthony Simonson? I always wondered if he showed up one day in the early 80s and bowled someone like Mark Roth. Well, you got to remember, he's a product of an environment. And Anthony's a great bowler. I'm sure he would do just fine, as I'm sure Jason Belmonte and EJ Tackett would do well in the 70s or 60s. Now, if they were bowling in the 60s and early 70s, they'd probably have to modify their games a little bit because I don't think the big revolutions would work as well. Um, those guys, Don Carter, who some of you may have heard his name before, he told me, because he was a great bowler back in the 50s and early 60s and probably late 40s also, but he told me that when he started to throw the ball straighter and leaving 8-10s is when he started bowling better, but that's how you needed to throw the ball back then. He didn't want to overhook the ball. So it was actually very unusual for guys to hook the ball a lot. And then when they started taking away some of the lacquer finishes, that's when like Mark Roth and Marshall Holman and a few other guys that started hooking the ball, and influenced Pete Weber and Loto Monicelli, and influenced me a little bit too. But I didn't grow up I didn't grow up bowling, as a 12, 13-year-old. So I never learned to hook the ball an excessive amount. And back then I hooked the ball a decent amount, but nowadays it's like, yeah, you don't hook the ball hardly at all. Rumor has it you're very good at table tennis. Hey, Tommy. Yeah, not so much. I'm decent. I like to play, but Tommy Kress, in case you don't know, he's a pretty good bowler, and I think he was fourth in the nation at the junior nationals when he was a kid. So, and I've had the honor of playing against Tommy, and yeah, he's pretty good. I believe your dad used to pitch at Warren Club. I guess you're talking to John there. What advice would you give a 50-year-old man with a wrist injury? Well, everybody, that's a problem when you have an injury of any kind. You gotta learn to deal with it. Whether it's a knee injury, and now all of a sudden you can't move your legs as fast. When I give my clinics and lessons and stuff, that's one of the things I ask them. I said, "Do you have any problem with your knees or stuff?" Because I have a little issue with my left knee, but it's not a big one. At one time, it was a very noticeable thing, but I've never had surgery on it. But I wear a pretty good knee brace when I bowl, when I start bowling a fair amount, and I kind of wear it as support. And that might be something that you might want to do, is look at some of the wrist devices. Now, the pros aren't going to use those wrist devices because it doesn't allow them to do what they want to do. But if you got a wrist problem, you need to kind of be wary of that. It might be you need to use a lighter ball. It depends on how much of a wrist injury it is. So it's those are kinds of things that you need to talk to your local pro shop guy. Maybe they can help you a little bit. Maybe your doctor even. My doctor actually told me to stop bowling when I had my knee problem, and I'm like, well, yeah, I'm pretty good at this game. I actually make pretty decent money at it, so yeah. Do I drill all my own equipment? I do not drill bowling balls. Not anymore. Just your last pitch in early 2000s. Well, that's kind of sad. I actually just got a message from Art Tyson Jr. His dad, Art Tyson, finished second in the world tournament a couple times, and I guess Art Tyson Jr. lives down in where is it? Port Charlotte, I believe he said he's living down there. So I haven't seen him at any tournaments, but we get a few people that come down to Florida, and they retired from wherever they were, and so we get a few horseshoe pitchers down there. So Let's see. How is the rival between you and Chris Warren? Well, I don't know. A rival is really a not a great term because you basically want to beat everybody that's out there. Chris is a great bowler. Uh, and when he was bowling on tour, back in the late '80s and early '90s, well, actually, more than just the late '80s, but he was a great bowler, and what he was able to do with a bowling ball. I mean, he's kind of like E.J. Tackett, not a very big guy, but could generate a lot of ball speed, a lot of rev rate. I mean, serious rev rate, and he still has a lot of rev rate, and he's 60 years old now, and he bowled great at the RPI tournament this last week. He and I pretty sure he uses a conventional grip because his rev rate's so high. He had to cut it down with the reactive balls. I think he tried using a fingertip grip. His brother told me he tried using a fingertip grip a year or two ago, and it was just too much hook. So it's Chris is a great talent. All right, and personally, I think he should be in the PBA Hall of Fame. I think I think he's got 6 national titles, and one of them's a major. Because he's got the Masters, and now he's won on the senior tour. And he's got 58 regular regional titles, which is more than anybody. So, yeah, I all the respect in the world for Chris, and he's a pretty good golfer too. At one time I was a decent golfer. I don't play much golf anymore, but played a couple rounds of golf with him. I enjoyed playing. Enjoyed my time with Chris. Great guy. Got to get some sleep before work comes. Yeah, that's a 4-letter word. You finally got snow in Syracuse. When did fingertip grip come onto the bowling scene? I wasn't there when it happened. I'm gonna guess 1920s or 10s. I really couldn't even tell you. I'm not a historian on bowling. I just know that at one time there were no holes in the ball, and then they had a finger hole and a thumb hole, so it was one finger hole. I think they were just using a middle finger or something, and then they put a second finger hole for the middle finger and the ring finger, and then somebody tried a fingertip grip. So it was kind of all these newfangled developments which we take for granted now. Just finished watching. Where did it go? Pin Gods and League of Ordinary Gentlemen, and then I got on Facebook and you're on live. Yeah, those are 2 great shows. Now you got to watch one more, Steve. There's a show called Any Given Saturday Afternoon, and it's a mockumentary. It makes fun of the League of Ordinary Gentlemen. They make fun of me and a few other guys. And if you enjoyed, especially if you've watched League of Ordinary Gentlemen, because it really it follows that show very closely, but it makes serious fun of us, and I enjoyed it. I mean, I've seen these other bowling movies, and then I'm like, doesn't really do anything for me, but I really enjoyed that one. I thought they did a really good job on that, and they probably spent more money than the people who actually made the documentary movie. Where are we going? Okay, Matthew Johnson, how you doing, buddy? Hope I see you've got 3 games in the other day. That's awesome. Had injections in your hand, wrist, little to no help. I may have to go lighter. Yeah, well, that's what I said. Maybe getting a wrist device or something. It's hard to say. Some guys need to have surgery. The problem is when you get injuries and stuff, you got to be careful because you don't want to make it worse. And unfortunately, us humans aren't as smart as we could be at times, and we'll go out and start doing stuff when we're not quite ready to do it. Do I play cornhole? Not really. Any given Saturday afternoon is hilarious. Yes, it is. Really cool you remember those things off the top of your head like that about my father. Oh, practically grew up at the Middlesex courts. I remember being a kid and my father and I watching PBA on Sundays and rooting for you. Well, thanks. Yeah, your dad was a pretty good player. Forget the name of the person. I can never find that video on YouTube, but there was a video of you and one other person that had some speed on the ball. I believe you were trying to keep up with speed on that person. Okay. That I can't help you on that. I don't remember that particular video. This might have been just might have been guys fooling around in practice or something. I don't know. What do you think of the NU balls? I've got two drilled. I've got one with my thumb hole in it, one without, and I've been kind of using it in league. I'm kind of interested. I got this another new urethane ball coming, and going to be trying it. And I'm looking forward to trying to use that on my league shot, because the league shot I bowl two-handed in league because I want to practice it a little bit, and I'm trying to have some fun. But unfortunately, I've gotten a little more serious at my two-handed game, so my having fun is not like it used to be, and I get a little frustrated because, one, I don't bowl as much as I should, so I'm not nearly as good as I'd like to be. I keep throwing horrible shots. The house shot kind of helps a little bit, but it also doesn't play right with the two-handed because it's a lot more rev rate, and I'm hooking the ball way more than I want to. So, what weight bowling ball do you use, and has that changed as you've gotten older? I couldn't tell you the exact year, but it was in the late 90s. I went to Japan for the Japan Cup. Well, because you're flying over there, you can only take so much stuff. So I didn't take my plastic ball. I thought, I'll take when I get there, I'll drill a plastic ball. And when I got there, they didn't have any 16-pound plastic balls, so I drilled a 15-pound plastic ball. And I'm like, oh, this actually feels kind of good. So when I got home, I actually drilled a 15-pound strike ball. And I've been using 15-pound strike balls since the late 90s. And I was player of the year a couple times on the regular tour with a 15-pound ball with my low rev rate. So I don't understand why some of these guys are using 16 pounds, but more power to them, I guess. Let's see. Have a great night. Thanks, Will. Early to mid 90s, he was a power player. I don't know. I mean, most of the guys on tour throw the ball way harder than I do. I can't even on my spare shots. I can't even throw it as hard as they do on their strike balls. So, and even back then, it was probably the same thing. Yeah, Scott, I tested positive for COVID a week and a half ago. I probably had it several days before that, so I figure I had it for almost 2 weeks, and today was the first day I didn't test positive for it. I still feel about the same as I felt the last week. I fortunately never felt horrible, but I thought it was probably a good idea not to go infect everybody else. So I haven't done any bowling in the last couple weeks. RSV, that's what it is that my wife has, and I probably also have, so it's probably a combination of that stuff. But fortunately I had my vaccine, so I never felt horrible. It just stayed with me for a long time. So Donald bowled at the Pro-Am at Erie, Pennsylvania. Oh, yeah. That's I really enjoyed bowling in Erie. What is your average speed on your strike ball? I can throw the ball several different ways. I can throw it really hard. I can slow down quite a bit. My median average speed, I guess. And the thing is the ball actually slows down about 3-4 miles an hour, and actually probably slows down even more beyond what it measures, because most bowling centers measure the ball speed at about 12 to 15 feet in front of pins, and well, from that point to the pins, there's basically no oil, so that friction slows the ball down even more, and it probably slows down another mile an hour. So if you want to get technical, that ball speed that registers 15.5, which I would say is kind of my average ball speed, is probably like 14.5 or 14. But at point of release, it might be 18. Because it's going to slow down 3 or 4 miles an hour from when you let go of it down there, because The friction slows the ball down, and the rev rate goes up. Physics. Let's see. Thanks, Larry. Like I said, I never felt horrible. I had a couple days, I had a few days here and there was kind of which I saw a doctor, gave me some medicine, and it made me feel a little better. But for the most part, I would say I feel about 90%. If that makes any sense. I get sniffles and stuff. I sneeze once in a while. I cough a lot. I can still feel a little congestion in my chest, even though I tested negative. And my understanding is that might stick around for a week or two. I don't even know. But I don't feel that bad. I just don't want to infect everybody else. What's your best advice for someone who muscles the ball? Talking about Nate Garcia breaking his arm after leaving. Well, I think a lot of people muscle the ball, and and the thing is, the reality is, you got to use your muscles. The problem is I think a lot of beginning bowlers muscle the ball a lot more than they need to because they want to be careful. They want to kind of aim the ball and all that. So, in that context, it kind of makes sense that they want to quote muscle the ball. Problem is when they do that, it doesn't free up your arm swing a little bit. So, and if you watch most of the pros, they have a nice free arm swing. They get the ball in the swing nice and early, and they run to the line. So you got to kind of. So when I give my lessons, that's one of the things if you go to YouTube, I've just posted a couple of videos of lessons that I've done. Basically, get the ball started early in the swing, get your legs going, and it's 90% of the pros do a lot of what I talk about. Nate Garcia is a perfect example of that. A lot of these young guys that bowl on tour or trying to bowl on tour, they get the ball in the swing nice and early, and they have huge backswing. So they rotate their shoulder, something I don't do. But still, the timing's still basically the same. The difference is with them, the ball's actually further along in the swing than it is for somebody like me because my backswing's not as high. So it's basically just a matter of get the ball in the swing nice and early and let the ball swing. In fact, when I do lessons, just swing the ball. Don't take a step, don't throw the ball, just swing the ball. And then try to emulate that swing while you bowl. It's hard to do because as soon as you start bowling, you forget about everything else. And so it's really hard to help somebody with that kind of stuff, but it can be done. Am I healed? Well, technically, I tested negative for COVID, but I still feel congestion in my chest and lungs. So I would say not 100%, but it's it is what it is. I think hopefully now I won't be infecting other people, but it's very possible I have RSV, which is also very contagious and not good for somebody who's really old. So I might go to the doctor and see about testing myself for that because I don't know if they have any. I'm kind of looking into that about testing for that because obviously I don't want to get other people sick. So how did you first start throwing two-handed? Did you take a lesson or just try? I just kind of tried it on myself. We had a couple guys bowling on tour that way. We had Oscar Palermo and Jason Belmonte, and they were very good at it. And I thought, well, I know that's a way to get more hook on the ball, and I don't have a lot of hook. And all these other guys on tour, they hook the ball way more than I do. So I kind of did a little bit. I fooled around with it, but I never put in a lot of time until about, I don't know, 6 years ago or so, maybe 7 years ago. And I actually put a few more games in, but I've never bowled an excessive amount of games two-handed. So in that respect, I'm pretty happy with my average, but I know that to be good at anything, you got to practice at it, and I just don't practice that much. While doing the Pro-Am, the last tournament there. Oh, I guess you're talking about Jonathan. Oh, Rocky Mount? Okay. Yeah, Lee Robeson, very good bowler, but he definitely muscles the ball. We got another guy bowls on the senior tour, Chris Keen's, very similar to Lee Robeson. Lots and lots of wrist, and they hook the ball a lot, which is not a bad thing. Hook the ball is not a bad thing. Trust me. If it was a bad thing, guys wouldn't do it. There's a reason why guys hook the ball because it works. However, there are times that hooking the ball isn't as good. Normally on a fresher condition and some of the less ratio, the 3 or 4 to 1 ratio patterns or less out of the gate, not so good at hooking the ball. And I've encouraged Lee and Chris, to use urethane and plastic. Out of the gate. We have one guy who's also does that. Rory Peterson. He uses rubber balls. He's got all these old bowling balls that are because he twirls the ball a lot and he hooks he and because his ball speed's not excessively high, so he's got a lot of hook. If he was using a reactive ball, he'd have to stand 3 hours left to be able to play, part of the lane. So he's learned to use the rubber balls, and he's very happy with it, and he's very good at it. So I found the video. Oh, it was David Traber. Yeah, David threw it hard and with a little bit of revs. Probably less revs than I did, but he was a very good bowler, and when he found his condition, he was pretty good. Yeah. What's your highest score two-handed? I've got several 300 games. So I guess that's kind of high. Um, my high series is I think 844 or something like that, which was insane because I think I missed the pocket like 5 times, but I struck every time I hit the pocket, which was crazy. You tried two-handed but can't get your feet timing down. Well, it's like anything. It takes practice. It doesn't just happen. And unfortunately, as we get old, Chris, it becomes a touch more challenging because the young guys, they're a lot limber and they can move their bodies the way the way they can. And when you get older, it's a little more challenging to do that. Did you ever bowl on the outside lanes when the tour was trying that? Yes, we did. And outside bowling's not really meant to be outside. I mean, unless you want to take away lane conditions and stuff. But the problem is any kind of moisture, little raindrops, you're going to stick on the approach unless you don't slide. Most bowlers slide. So for me, that was a really bad thing. In fact, we were bowling. They used to have the bunch of events outside in the summertime, and it was started sprinkling a little bit. And I thought, I'm not going to bowl. I don't want to hurt myself. And all that stuff was tape delayed, so they could do that. And then I know the ladies had the one tournament in Reno where they had a little kind of a dust storm, and the dust got on the lanes, and the lane conditions got ridiculous. And I mean, it was just, it's not, some of these marketing things, not really the best thing for bowling, but that's the way it is. Let's see. Larry Verbal has had a great year. Larry Verbal's a great bowler. Your opinion, is the PBA Tour as popular today as it was back in your heyday? I would say that unfortunately there's always been more and more and more competition on TV and everything else. So when I started the tour, and that wasn't my heyday, but it was probably bowling's heyday, where the ratings on TV were very, very good because most places had like 3 channels, and cable TV was just coming into its own and just starting. So there still wasn't an excessive amount of competition, and most people basically watched 3 channels. So on Saturday afternoon, you had the 3 major networks, and one of them, ABC, showed bowling. And so the ratings were actually very, very good way back then. And even though I made more TV shows than anybody else, those guys, that in the 70s and early 80s, the Mark Ross and Earl Anthonys and Marshall Holmans, those guys were on TV enough that enough people really knew who they were. Where me, it was, later on there was still a bunch of people watching, but unfortunately ratings got lower and lower and lower because more competition, and unfortunately it's still going on, and now it's, only relegated to streaming services, which unfortunately some people don't even know about, and other people don't want to pay for, which I don't understand, because if you enjoy bowling and you want to watch it, you should support the organizations that you like. So let's see, Jonathan, thank you. Oops, oh man. Okay, good question, Maria, but I went to tournaments back in the 80s, and if you don't get a grandstand seat, you're going to be standing on the back of the bleachers. Yeah, unfortunately, that's kind of the way it is. Now, on the senior tour, when we come here to the villages, which is right near where I live, I don't live in the villages, but I'm right next to it, we probably have the best attendance, spectator-wise, that they have of any tournament all year long. Even the national tour, except maybe the national TV shows. But yeah, it's definitely not as good as it used to be. And you know, there's so many factors that go into that. It's not just one thing. You know, a lot of people blame or the competition. I think is um, they think that competition is like other bowling centers, but really the competition is golf. It's it's cornhole. It's gambling. You know, there's all these other things that are actually competing against bowling, and that's really where the problem is. And it's not just bowling. You know, there's a lot of people who enjoy bowling, and a lot of people who enjoy watching bowling. Problem is when it's not on TV at a regular time and all stuff, it makes it more challenging to watch. So you kind of have to be a hard, you know, a real fan to be able to know when it's going on and stuff. I mean, there are programs I like to watch, and I have trouble finding them because it's just not the way it used to be. Things are so much more different. There's so much more competition. Everybody likes to watch streaming stuff. A lot of people don't want to even sign up for leagues anymore. They just want to play video games. Well, that's unfortunately it's a kids thing. You know, they grow up, you know, playing video games and computer games and stuff, and but they get, you know, they don't get out and play stuff anymore. I I love playing video games and computer games and board games and stuff, but I love playing horseshoes. I love playing the other sports, but you know, I loved bowling and playing horseshoes because those are things I could do on my own. I didn't need 10 other guys to play. I could go out and practice on my own. Do I watch Larry Lichstein stream? Not really. Let's see. The energy of the college bowling is pretty electric. Well, I think anytime you get the team competition stuff going on and people yelling and screaming and stuff, that's definitely going to make it more energetic. Let's see. How much does changing the pitch in your thumb affect the ball roll? I, it depends. I would say it depends on how much you changed it and all that. I've changed my pitch a little bit in the last, I haven't, not in the last couple of years, but before that I modified a little bit here and there. When I changed my grip 13 and a half years ago, it changed a lot. But I've got arthritis in my fingers, all my fingertips. See, I don't know if you can really see. Well, this is okay. This is my big one. So this is my right hand. Okay, this finger here, my index finger. Look at that compared to my left hand, and it's just it's just it just it's a quarter size bigger because the knuckles are so big, and I got arthritis in all my knuckles. It's even on the left hand, and I can barely make a fist with my right hand. It just that's the nice things about getting old. So because of that, 13 and a half years ago, it got so painful when I was bowling that I actually shortened my span about probably over a half an inch and went to a very relaxed fingertip. So my fingertip grip went from probably about right there to down here, but I was using that grip. I was only putting the fingertips in. So now when I put my fingers in the ball, it's very relaxed. You could probably put a pencil in between my hand there. And at first my thumb pitch went this way. Now I've actually zeroed out my thumb. My finger pitches are still away. But when I did all that, my track went from being right next to my finger and thumb to probably being about an inch and a half, 2 inches over. It's kind of funny because when I bowl two-handed, my track is over my middle finger, and if I had a thumb hole, it would track over the thumb hole. So it's kind of interesting. Let's see. Good night, Lee. I'll see you somewhere. Let's see. I'm glad League is starting up again this week for the second half. Yeah, well, that's good. Yeah, hopefully I'll be bowling on Wednesday. when you had your bus, were you ever sorry that you bought that? Well, I actually had three RVs. I had two fifth wheel trailers, and then I had a motorhome. It wasn't really a bus, but some people are confused about that kind of stuff. But it was very large. It was 40 feet. The third RV that I had, and I had it for what 14 or 15 years. And when I had it, and when I was bowling on tour and using it a lot, it was a nice thing. At the end of its quote life, or it wasn't really at the end of its life, but I wasn't using it very much, and every time I did use it, I had problems with it. So it got to be kind of a pain, and I finally sold it. Sold it for way less than what I lost lots of money on it. Basically, if you buy an RV, it's kind of like buying a boat. You should know it's gonna cost a lot more than you think it is. That's just some words of wisdom. I actually got to be on the other side this year at the Villages event doing the bowling. Too bad I wasn't in your squad. Would have been great. Well, who is your favorite bowler you like to beat? I like to beat them all. A straighter bowler for 40 plus years, lacking rev rate. Okay, I get that. Any suggestion on how to increase that wristbands or other? I'm 62 in the 220s. Well, Jim, you could try a wrist thing where it like cups your wrist a little bit. The problem is what the guys on tour do is they get their wrist in that strong position, and at the point of release they go like that. So if you have one of those things, it doesn't allow you to do that, which is why they don't use those wrist devices. You don't see any tour player using one of those things because it doesn't allow them to do what they want to do. However, having their wrist in that position will help you get more revs on the ball. It's, so it's that might help, but you can learn how to do that. Myself, my wrist doesn't like doing that type of a release. If I did that a few times, I probably wouldn't be able to bowl very much. So it's a little bit of a challenge. When I bowl two-handed, though, that extra support from the other hand allows me to do that. Problem is again, I don't practice enough at it. Like everything, you got to practice, you got to work at it, and I just don't do that. But you can learn how to get your hand position and do that kind of thing. But like anything, it takes a lot of practice. My suggestion: try an 8-pound ball. Don't put your thumb in it, just put your fingers in it and learn how to get that ball to spin this way. The more the ball goes this way, the more it's going to hook. That's just physics. And obviously, when you get that higher rev rate, it's going to hook even more. Was hoping when high school bowling as big as it has gotten that league bowling would have seen more joining. Well, yes, there's a lot of kids that enjoy bowling, which is awesome. The problem is it's really a small percentage of the general population out there, So it's not like we've got, I mean, they have a high school bowling team here at the Villages. You're talking 10 to 15 kids, maybe 20 altogether, and they're usually begging to get some of those kids, and most of them are starters. So you're not talking about a lot of kids out of a school that's got 2,000 kids. So yes and no. I mean, it's nice that the high school bowling is something, but it needs to be way more than that. They think bowling is dead, but the pro shop owner in Rocky Mountain is busier than he has ever been. No, well, bowling's not dead. It's probably never really going to die. But it could do better in other places. I mean, you go down to some place like Miami. Miami has one bowling center now, from my understanding, and it's a lot of people down there. The problem is when you get huge, those big cities like that, the price for property is so high that it's hard to justify, how much money you can. I mean, basically, you have to charge $10 a game. Some people can afford it. Most of them, a lot of the part-time bowlers, that's the Bowlero model. It's the people that bowl recreationally that don't mind spending, $100 on a night. They do it once in a while. It's those people that like to bowl a lot. They don't want to spend $100 every night that they go bowling. So, and I get it. I totally understand. So. Hi, Natalie. I'm doing okay. I finally tested positive or negative for COVID, so that's good. But um, I never felt horrible, which is a good thing. I guess sometimes those vaccines actually help. It just took forever. I still got a little bit of something on my chest, but fortunately I didn't feel horrible, so that was good. My wife, she's hanging in there. It affected her a lot more, but several years ago she had pneumonia, so she's unfortunately more susceptible to her for her than I am. And also they didn't give her the RSV vaccine, which I had, so and she did test positive for that, which I probably also have, but never tested for it. So, what is your favorite win? I would have to go with my very first win, on the national tour, 1986. Happy New Year to you too, Natalie. Hope everybody's doing well out in California. How many bowlers on average enter a PBA 50 tournament? Um, Probably about 110, 120. That's just a guess. I mean, there's some tournaments that are 70 or 80, and some are going to be 160. Have you ever thought about doing cornhole along with the horseshoe? Um, yes and no. It doesn't really interest me. And I keep thinking, well, maybe I should try that, but it just doesn't really interest me. Let's see. Where are we going? Chris was about 170 in the village. Has been, yeah. When you throw two-handed, do you get the ball drilled without a thumb hole or with it? Well, if I'm bowling two-handed, I don't have a thumb hole because I don't use my thumb when I bowl two-handed. If I bowl one-handed, I put a thumb hole in it. So I have bowling balls for two-handed and I have some for one-handed. Hi, James. Hope you're doing well. Bowling is really down. For example, the state of Michigan, a lot of bowling was closed. They made churches out of them. Shame bowling is not dead, but it's not like it was 40 years ago. Yeah, I mean, society's totally different than it was. I mean, like I talked about. I mean, now the entertainment value, or the entertainment. Now, you've got. I've got a thing. I've got 16,000 channels I can watch on TV. I'm not going to watch them all because that's ridiculous. But the streaming service and everything. It used to be people that were really into bowling. They bowled 3, 4, 5 times. There was a guy who bowled 16 or 17 leagues. So he's bowling basically 2 to 3 leagues every single day, and which is kind of crazy. Nowadays, there's probably nobody that bowls more than 4 or 5 leagues in a week. Where years and years ago, that was a very common thing. People bowling 3 or 4 leagues a week. No, thanks, Gary. Don't think I have any. I don't know if I have any videos of me playing it. Well, actually, I probably do. I got a hard drive of some old videos. In 1988, my brother and a couple of guys took video. I mean, they took so much video of the World Horseshoe Tournament that year. It's crazy. They were going to do some stuff with it, and they never really did. But I have copies of it all. So I very possibly have a copy of your dad beating me that year. I'll have to. I might have to pull that up. I don't know. I'd rather show some stuff where I'm actually doing decent, but lately my horseshoe game is not like it used to be. That was a really disappointing year. I was pitching really well that year, and then I just kind of gassed it off at the end of the tournament. Very frustrating for me, especially being it was kind of hometown and all that stuff. But it's what happens. Things happen like that. Let's see. Never thought it would be that many these days. Great program. Thanks for answering our questions. Well, thanks, Joe. Good health to you, too. Liked it when the cost was 40 cents or 3 games for $1. Exactly. I mean, well, it's kind of all relative, but I don't know that per game bowling is more expensive now than it was 40 years ago. It might be, inflation-wise and all that. It's hard to say. But it's, unfortunately is what it is. How many different bowling balls do you estimate you've thrown? I got no idea. Well, I mean, for the first few years, it wasn't a whole lot of bowling balls, and then now, and lately there's so many new bowling balls coming out. So say 40 years and say 10 balls a year, that's 400 balls, and that's like totally a guess. Really have no idea. All right, Chris, maybe see you on Wednesday. I'm glad you love the jersey. A compass. Are you set up to do any online bowling lessons? Not yet. I had somebody ask about it, but they didn't reply back to me. So maybe they thought I was going to charge them too much. I really wasn't going to. I was going to charge them $50. So, but the problem is setting it up, because there's two ways to do it. One way is for me to do a live video with them at the lanes, me being at home, and the other is for them to take some video and send it to me. The live video feed would probably work better, but it would all be challenging, and I've never really done it. 80s bowled 8 leagues, 2 double shifts, tournaments, and weekends. Yeah, I mean that was very common. That was very common. Let's see. Any upcoming balls that you're excited about trying? Um, I've got a bunch of balls in my garage that need to put holes in them, but I'm kind of looking forward to a new urethane ball that's coming out. One of my league teammates has over 12 balls. Well, that's not a big surprise. Bowls on 4 leagues and has over 20 jerseys. I don't think bowling's dead. We have a 3 times a week bowling club in Citrus County. Yeah, and I agree. I don't think bowling's dead. I don't know that I don't think it's as popular as it was 30, 40 years ago, but it's still pretty popular. I mean, in its heyday, it was like 6, 8 million people that bowled league, or maybe 9 million or something when you in the late 70s, and now there's, I don't know, less than 2 million, which is obviously less, but there's still plenty of people who like to bowl recreationally. So, what is your highest 3 games? 857 with the yellow dot, 1982. Bowling alley in Kansas City had 32 lanes. I think the PBA was there a few times. It's now been demolished. Don't know why, but my kid passed away years ago and it was never the same. Was that the one with Danny? I think there was a baseball pitcher, Danny. I can't remember his last name, but I think he might have been involved with that. So yeah, we bowled the Tournament Champions there a few times. Do you remember Charlie Webb, horseshoe player from Southern Illinois, early 80s? Well, actually, he's still around, I think. I actually practiced with him, God, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. He had done something to his foot. He was actually pitching horseshoes with a boot, one of those cast boots on his foot. Let's see. I used to live in Kingport, and my brother and sister too. Oh, okay. Okay, let's see. I would love to do a live video lesson with you, or catch you at one of your Midwest events. Sure. Message me, and we'll see what we can do. Who was your bowling idol growing up? I loved watching all the good players. I mean, back in the early 70s, I mean, Johnny Petraglia was one of them, but there was, Dave Davis, Wayne Zahn, and later on it was, Earl Anthony and Mark Roth, and Marshall Holman, Tommy Hudson, and just watched the Japan tournament 289 against Pete Weber. What was that arm thing he did when he struck? It was very unsportsmanlike. I'm not sure he said arm thing, but there was a thing that he used to do, which was kind of a little on the obscene sign, but the PBA said, sure, go ahead and do it. I don't know that it was unsportsmanlike, just maybe not totally appropriate, but it got a lot of notice. It might be, but you don't have the houses like you used to have. Used to be a bowling alley everywhere, not anymore. They closed them down. You don't see a new one opening up at all anymore. There are a few new ones, but the other part of that is, I think the number of bowling lanes is actually very similar to what it was in the early 80s. I don't know the exact numbers, but I think the difference is a lot of those really small bowling centers closed down and they became bigger bowling centers. So the 4, 6, 8 lane bowling centers kind of went away. And there's still a few of those around, trust me. I've been to a few. Um, but, you know, the 40 lane or 60 lanes and stuff, and a bunch of those have closed down too. So, but I want to say that the number of bowling lanes is pretty close to what it was. It might be a little bit less, but I don't think it's not like a tenth, which, you know, if you're looking at the number of league bowlers, which is, you know, 20% or 15% of what it was, you know, you think, well, the number of lanes would be 15 or 20, and it's not. The number of actual lanes is still pretty decent. Did you ever pick 6-9 out of the first ball? um, I've probably done it once, but that's not a very normal thing for me to do. Um, so can you give where to go, where to go, where to go? Can you give out the website to buy jersey? Thank you. Compass Sportswear, compasssportswear.com. So it's here. Where am I? Oh. So there it is. That's our logo. But if you go to compasssportswear.com, and I should have a link. If you go to my fan page, if you go there, I think there's a link there, or you can just look it up, and we can help you with that. Thank you, Robbie. What do you feel is more important, hitting the head pin on the first ball or picking up spares? Well, they're both important, but I think if you're not able to hit the head pin on your first shot, it makes the spares a lot more challenging normally. But sometimes those spares hitting the head pin too much, getting those splits is not easy either. So I think unfortunately some of the younger players that have really learned how to throw a nice strike ball have not learned how to throw a good spare ball. And that's definitely I tell guys when I do my clinics, I said nobody strikes every ball. So you gotta learn to pick up spares. What do you think of string pin? To be honest, I'd rather not bowl on string pins, but I think they're making improvements on it, and I think one day that the string pins might be just almost the same as regular pins. The reality is the better bowler is going to be the better bowler. It's not like it's going to make somebody who's terrible a better bowler. I think everybody's up in arms about that, and I get it. But the reality is there's a lot of luck involved in bowling anyway. You know, you can throw a horrible shot and get a strike. You can throw a great shot and not get a strike. With the string pins, same kind of thing happens. It's a little different. Same thing happens with the twister pins, the plastic pins. A lot of pros don't like that because they fall a little bit different. The reality, the better bowler is going to be the better bowler. So I would prefer that they figure out a way to get it so that the string pin is almost identical. That's never going to happen, but I think they can make it a little bit better. I've offered my knowledge. So far, nobody's taken me up on that, but how would you go about fixing serious toe drag? Feeling sorry for my right shoe. Well, it depends on what you call toe drag, because to me, you want to have a good toe push off. You look at my right shoe, I've got it worn down right where that right toe would be, because I kick off, but my foot goes up in the air, so I don't drag my foot on the ground. Where there's like one of the schools of thought is to keep your foot on the ground, and be balanced that way. There's plenty of good bowlers that do that, but I was influenced a little bit by Mark Roth. He kicked his foot up in the air, as did Dick Weber, and there's a few other guys. There's a bunch of guys that do that. They kick their foot up in the air, and I've had people tell me that's terrible. You shouldn't do that. I'm like, I don't know. I've done okay. So, but if you're dragging it serious amount, I don't know that's such a bad thing. That you really kind of want to have a little bit of that, a little bit of that drive off your push away step. So, just might have to go through another pair of shoes or two. That's all. Hall of Famer Bob Strampy gained his early His early fame as a member of leading teams in the Minneapolis area, then joined the Stros of Detroit. The four-time USBC champion returned to the Twin Cities for a year to bowl with Minnesota. Their entry in the bowling league. When the league folded, he rejoined the Stros. He followed Don Carter, the second person to win the PPAA. He was one of the few bowlers with 300 game and 5. Okay. Yeah, I met Bob. He bowled a few senior tournament or bowled regular tournaments and stuff. He was definitely older than I was, but yeah. Do any bowling greats pin bowl rather than arrow bowl? I don't know about the. I would say most of the guys look at a target as opposed to the pins, and my best explanation of that is if you're looking at a target that's 60 feet away and you're hooking the ball, your ball's never going to reach your target. It's just not going to. So basically, your angle has to be, if you're a right-hander, you have to look at the 10 pin or the gutter or something like that to get that angle. So it doesn't make any sense. For me, the ball doesn't really hook in the first 15 feet because there's a lot of oil there. The ball hooks a tiny bit, but it's really not hooking that much. So it's, to me, it's that immediate feedback of looking at a target and seeing the ball go over the target and getting that feedback in addition to how it feels when you leave your hands. However, I do know one champion that got 5 PBA national titles. Dennis Horan was a pin bowler. Then you got somebody who, Wes Malott and Liz Johnson, who look at the foul line when they throw the ball. Now, I think they both kind of look down the lane, and then as they bowl, their target comes in, and when they get to the foul line, their head's looking down and they're looking at the foul line. I don't know how they bowl that way. You get used to doing certain things. I gave a lesson to a guy one time who didn't look at his feet and didn't look at his target and just threw the ball. And he averaged like 225 in league. I'm like, well, that's not too bad. That's pretty good bowling a house shot where things are kind of similar. If you ever bowl anything else, I don't see how you're going to be able to average anything because you got to be able to make your adjustments. It helps to move your feet in the right, and everything's all feel for that player. There is an 8-lane old woodhouse there near me. They are busy always. Small town. Yeah, and that happens. Those little bowling centers that are in some of those small towns, they still do all right. First pair of horseshoes were Deadeyes. I got them about late 70s, early 80s. I was about 8. Oh, good. Do you still play? That's the bigger question. I was practicing tonight, and I cracked one of my horseshoes. People say, how do you crack a horseshoe? I probably broke something. And these didn't just crack, because I think I probably have, because I've got my ex-wife's old horseshoes, and I got my horseshoes, and my ex-wife's mom's horseshoes and stuff. And I finally bought a new pair a couple of years ago, but I had all these old horseshoes, and they would crack every couple of years, so I'd have to replace it. And as I got all these old horseshoes and stuff, and then I'm like, so when I was practicing tonight, it was cracking, and I could see the crack. I'm like, wow, this isn't going to make it through the night. Sure enough, one of the shots, it completely split the horseshoe and completely too. It was kind of interesting. That happens. I actually put a video up of me playing at the World Championships in 1981, and the guy I was playing, I think the shoe actually cracked completely in two. It was around the stake, but it was like it just separated. So you could see it was a ringer, and he said he wasn't going to question me on the ringer, but I had to get a new pair of shoes because it was. And the game wasn't finished yet, so and it kind of affected my pitching a little bit there because it was like the paint on it was quite a bit different than what I was using. But yeah, the horseshoes do crack once in a while and do break. Let's see. Why are there so many 300 games? Are the bowlers better? I would say no, the bowlers really aren't any better. Lane conditions. That's the biggest culprit. Lane conditions, easy lane conditions. The house conditions, they got lots more oil in the middle of the lane than they have on the outside, and it just makes the lane conditions a lot easier. So you got a miss area, and lane conditions are the biggest reason for scores. Everybody talks about the bowling balls, but put them on a flat pattern and see how good they do. Thanks, Dan. Happy New Year to you too. I don't even see arrows on the lanes when watching your videos. Are they still there, or am I just losing a bit of ice? Well, the problem is you're watching a video which the quality is not that good. You know, it's um, I I can either zoom in on the video on the arrows and you don't see anything else. I can zoom in on the score, you don't see anything else, or you can see my form bowling and maybe see the pins a little bit. Unfortunately, when I do my videos, it's just me. I just set the camera up and I go, and I don't even look at it afterward. You know, so I don't see what everybody else sees because I'm bowling at the time. I get people, why is it doing this? Why is your camera angle so bad? Why is this? Why do people stand in front of the camera? I'm like, I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. Let's see. That's how I bowl. I trace my eyes from pins to dots at the foul line and throw the dots. Somehow it works for me on strikes and spares. Well, if you threw the ball nice and straight, if you don't hook the ball, you can do that. But if you hook the ball, like I said, you're going to be looking at the 10 pin or the gutter or something like that if you're right-handed. If you're Jason Omani, you look 2 lanes late. Let's see. Harry Johnson thinks it's because the balls are better. Bowl on a flat pattern. See how well you bowl. It's the lane conditions. A flat pattern. Tim, a flat, okay. So on a house shot, imagine, so this is a lane, okay? This is a house pattern. Lots of oil in the middle of the lane. This is all the oil. On the outside, very little oil. A flat pattern, that's flat. The same amount of oil in the middle lane as there is on the outside. So when you miss to the right, the ball goes to the right. When you miss to the left, the ball goes to the left. On a house pattern, if you're lined up properly, you can miss to the right and the ball hooks. In fact, sometimes it hooks too much. Sometimes you miss left and it's going to hold that line. Or sometimes it holds too much. Actually, a lot of times on a house shot that happens. And the pros actually hate that. I don't really care for the house shots. I'd rather bowl on a more tapered pattern, and actually a flat pattern would be fine by me. It'd make me bowl better because unfortunately I've gotten so used to bowling on easy patterns that I don't execute as well as I used to. And then when I bowl on a really challenging patterns like a flat pattern, all of a sudden it's like I just throw the ball everywhere, and it's like wow, boy, I'm not very good. Well, this has gone a little bit longer than I normally go. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And don't forget to order some jerseys from us. Thank you. Have a great night. And Happy New Year.